Remington. Here at the Milsurp Garage, we recently examined the legendary 500 series of Remington rimfire rifles while focusing on the iconic Model 513S, the Matchmaster. Thanks to some innovation by the great Lexi Crittenden, with some late-night drafting table smoky room lit with a single overhead lamp collaboration with John Howell, William Gale Jr., Merle Walker, and Philip Haskell, they created the 700 series of rifles to bring centerfire cartridges into the slide action family over at Remington. See, the Model 141, designed by John Petersen in 1913 as the Model 14, was on its way out after 30 years of Petersen design perfection, but sporting small, outdated cartridges. Remington needed Crittenden's receiver, action, and fire control design to chamber the mighty 3006 and create the new Gamemaster. They succeeded and failed at the same time, and also, by no fault of their own, created what would become one of the most notorious rifles in American history and be named in one of the harshest gun control bills ever levied on the American people. Sounds like we better get started. Milsurp Garage. The Dr. Disrespect inspired intro. So what do we have today? The Remington Model 760 Gamemaster. You knew I had to go there after we were messing with the 500 series, right? So what is this thing? It is a pump, otherwise known as a slide action 3006 chambered 4-round detachable magazine equipped rifle with a 22-inch barrel, sling swivels, a Williams peep sight, dual action bars. This thing is equipped. A complete package. Everything Remington was throwing at the wall in the early 50s. Introduced in 52 and discontinued in 1980. Had a nice long life. This example here was made in July of 1952. It is a very early production example, dated using our barrel date code chart with a date code of OYY. The price in 1952 was about $100. This was replaced in 1981 with the Model 6, then the 7600, then the 76. Different rifles, so we're not really going to touch on it. We'll wait to maybe do a video on its replacement one of these days down the line, but that's what eventually replaced it in 81. And keeping with our tradition of maintaining a collection of special date-coded guns, this is the Australian commemorative OYY edition of the Remington 760 as the OY edition. Okay? So we always love to come up with something that those date codes spell out. And this is the Australian commemorative. So these were originally offered when they were released, originally offered in 3006, 300 Savage, 35 Remington, and 270 Winchester. And now some conflicting information. And you can't even go by, you say like, well, just do what you always say. Look at the ads. Go look at the advertising. What did that say? Because that usually gives you the right answers. But I even found conflicting advertising as to what calibers were, what chamberings were first released at the beginning and when they got it added in and when they came on. Wikipedia kind of had like a nice breakdown of the year that the calibers were offered. Of course, Wikipedia is, user-generated information. So you got to use like what they call a preponderance of the evidence to come up with what you're going to quote. And this is what I'm quoting. Eventually, other calibers came in. I'm not going to give dates on these because, again, I don't know. But you had a 257 Roberts, a 244 Remington, 308 Winchester, 222 Remington, 280 Remington, 223 Remington, 243 Remington, and a 6mm Remington. Some of these were just for a limited time in its production history. And in its production history, they made just over 1 million of these things. Amazing. So the patent, I'm going to cover this right away. And I got to be really careful because what is his, The Blind Sniper? It's a nice YouTube channel. Some guy in Florida, shoots up stuff. I like this guy. Watch his videos all the time. His latest video, I got a strike. Right after that, I got another strike. Normally, I'm like kind of like like the rule following kind of thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, listen, YouTube, it's our platform. Like it or leave it. They have rules. If you don't like it, you don't have to be here. But if you want to be here, you got to follow the rules. So if you broke the rules, it's your own fault. But I don't know. I'm making videos where I don't think I'm breaking the rules. And so I kind of understand what he's talking about. He's just like, hey, I'm just getting these strikes, and when you get 2 within a certain amount of time, then the third one, they remove your channel forever. So he's basically saying goodbye. He's like, listen, I'm making videos. They're striking me. I don't know what's going on. So I was going to start my warnings kind of like expired and I'm back to like, their good graces again. So I was going to kind of try to introduce these patents and show them to you guys again and be like, listen, these are patent drawings. YouTube should calm down. They're not instructions on how to build one. It's just the patent drawings. That's not what they are. You can't, you could build a rifle from a patent drawing the same as you'd be able to build a rifle from just a regular photograph of it. It's not detailed instructions on how to build it, like drafting, or whatever. Let me just I'm going to give you these patents, and I encourage you with this one especially, look these up on your own. Go to Google Patents. Strangely enough, we can go to Google Patents. Google owns YouTube. We can go to Google Patents and look at these patents, but we can't look at it on YouTube. Interesting that the place I'm sending you to go to is the very place that won't let me show them. So the main rifle, L.R. Crittenden and William Gale Jr. The main rifle patent is interesting in that it covers the semi-auto and the pump of this design. So there's 2 designs. We're going to get to it in a little while. We'll talk about it. There was a semi-auto design too that kind of, it's its brother, you know what I mean? Came out a couple of years after. But the patent kind of covers both. It's 2685754. Yeah, by the way, get out a pen and pencil. Just write these down. I don't want you disappearing on me, unless you watch and you're on a computer, you want to open up another window and take a look at it while we go. It's like, I'm not going to go along them with in detail to like reference them, but look at them later on your own. Just go to Google Patents, type in US and then this number, and they'll come up. So that's the main rifle. We got a bunch of them here. This is why this one's cool. So J.D. Howell has a patent for the bolt head and extractor. It's also, I believe, that patent also involves the ejector too, I believe. But that one is 2473373. Next, the firing mechanism. That one is Merle Walker. 2514981. The barrel receiver connection, that's going to be critical later on. We're going to talk about that a little bit. That is Lexi Crittenden 2747313. These were all new ways of doing doing things like this. These patents were all like forward movement in the design of rifles. Huge departure from the Model 14, Petersen's design. And the maybe most interesting that you'll want to poke around and check out is the Fire Control Group. This is a patent filed in 51, granted in 54. This Fire Control Group, I think, is still on Remingtons today. It's called the RCFC, the Remington Common Fire Control. This is that trigger mechanism, the fire control system that's held in by the two pins, the big fat pin and the skinny pin on Remingtons that we've been knocking out for years. That trigger control group is Lexi Crittenden 2675638. And check that one out. That's going to come into play a little bit later as well. So those are the patents. So let's talk a little bit about the variants. There's just some topics I want to cover on these, because I don't want to, I don't feel like I want to leave you guys flat, but there really is just a tremendous amount of information on these variants, and I can't even begin to start breaking it down. I'd lose you faster than I normally would lose you if I started talking about these little idiosyncrasies with the variants. But just to cover them in a nutshell, they were mostly just cosmetic differences, but there are a couple of exceptions, and those are the ones that are the coolest of the exceptions. There was a 760, obviously just a straight up 760. There was a 760 ADL. You'll hear this when you look at these. If you're at a gun show, someone will say this one's an ADL. There's a BDL. There's a CDL, okay? The ADL is basically A grade deluxe. The BDL is B grade deluxe. And strangely enough, the B grade had the nicer wood. So the B grade was the better. It was better than the A grade for some confusing reason from Remington. But it was the CDL, the C grade, that was unique in that it had an 18 1/8 inch barrel and a shorter forearm bracket tube is what they called this. They called it a forearm bracket tube. Normally on like a shotgun, you just say that's the magazine tube, but it's not the magazine. This rifle has a detachable magazine, but it's a pump, so the pump had to ride on something. So it's basically just an empty tube just there for the pump to ride on, for the forearm to ride on. So they call it a forearm bracket tube. And this carbine example is 8 1/8 inch barrel. 18 1/8 inch barrel version was only made from 60 to 63 and in limited calibers. So this is, when you see one of these, they're interesting. And in 63, the tube, so they changed a lot here now. So the tube used on this carbine version used two telescoping metal tubes with an O-ring in between, so there was no rattle. And that became a design. They liked that so much that it became a design that was adopted on all of these from then on. So even the 22-inch ones, they only made those from 60 to 63. But in 63, the barrels might have been longer, but they kept that shorter magazine. Well, I call it a magazine tube, but the forearm bracket tube, they kept that shorter one. And that's how you could kind of identify these from an earlier version, later version. And the cap, this is how you tell. The cap travels with the forearm. With the newer ones, and the older ones, like this one, the cap would be stationary. So let's take a look. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So here you don't see the cap when the forearm is in its forward position. If we put the forearm into its rear position, slides on the tube and this cap stays up here. Whereas on these newer ones, I want to say newer, but you know, the carbine version that brought that new design, you wouldn't see this tube exposed. This cap would stay here, and these two pieces of tube would kind of, one would ride inside the other to fit in here. And then when you brought the forearm back forward again, those two tubes would untelescope. So this cap would stay on the wood the whole way. So as soon as you just see one of these laying on a table at a gun show, let's say, and you just open it. If you open it, first of all, if it has a short 18 and an 1/8 inch barrel, you should just grab it immediately. I think those are popular. I think there's like a huge following for those. I'm not sure, but when you open it, if you see this tube stay like that, then you know it's an older version. And there's other clues too. I think later on maybe we'll touch on a few of those. But that's one thing that is an easy identifier. Let's put it that way. So all of these variants, right? They all used the same receiver. So regardless of the caliber, there were so many calibers. Some of these rounds were large, some of these were small. You know, 35 Remington, small. 30-06, huge. So you would think on a lot of rifles, you would have like different sized receivers because, you know, this magazine is a huge magazine here. This magazine has to hold 30-06. This one is marked 30-06 on it, and it has to be able to hold 30-06 rounds. How a 35 Remington going to fit in here? You know, no matter what you did structurally to the magazine, right? Well, they did structurally change the magazines. They put block off plates. They made them a certain way. Whatever they did, they made them where they fit inside here. Same size receiver, same size everything. And they were all compatible. This receiver was compatible with all of these smaller shells as well as the largers. And what are some other features that date these? So now that I touched on this magazine too, but there's a couple more. Is if you see inside the receiver here, let's take out the magazine for now, just because it makes it easier to move stuff around, because it does have a lock open feature because of this mag. And again, we'll discuss that a little later when we deal with magazines. But see this little guy right here? It's like a dust cover. I always thought these things, when I'd pick them up and I'd operate the action, it always seemed like something was broken because it would like clack around, and I was like, what's going on there in that bolt? Is it busted? But no, it's just a dust cover. And if this dust cover is metal like this, and it has this rounded front, that's the earlier version. The newer version is plastic, and it has like a diagonal, a tapered, they call it, a tapered cut in it. That change was, I guess, around 1960. All these changes are around 1960. The magazine tube thing, the dust cover thing, and the introduction of the 742, which is the semi-auto. We'll get to that in a second. Of course, the calibers can date them. The later models also had impressed checkering. You'll see some of them have a basket weave impressed checkering, Monte Carlo stocks with cheek pieces, all kinds of stuff. Me, I wanted an earlier one. I knew when I found one of these, I was going to get an earlier one. And I did. I found an early one because I just didn't want any of that impressed checkering or plastic stuff here. And when I started to research them a little bit to get one, I realized that this was the version that I would feel most comfortable with. A little bit more of the steel, a little bit less of the impressed checkering stuff. I just like just a straight up wood. You know what I mean? But this one is a little weird. I don't know if it's an ADL, or BDL. I don't know which one it is, because it has sling swivels and it has this this peep sight on it. So I'm not really sure if it was considered a deluxe really hard to research the options that you got with these, different deluxe models. They switch stuff around. Supposedly, if they had deluxe wood, but there was a little bit of a blemish on it, they would just kick it over to the non-deluxe one. So you could see one that has what would be considered the deluxe wood and say, oh, that's one of the B DLs, but it's an ADL with the better wood because it had like a weird little knot somewhere on it where it didn't make the grade. So you never can, it's just kind of like a mess. When you look online and see people trying to figure out which one they have, it's a mess. So I just didn't feel like really getting into that mess. I'm just kind of happy with the way it's equipped, So I guess this is good a time as any to bring up the semi-auto brother, the Model 740. We'll touch on it a little bit. It was introduced in 55 as the Woodsmaster and became the 742 in 1960. So it changed. There were considerable changes to the design at that time. And these things sold 1.4 million of these things through 1980. But even though they sold that many, they had a nickname. It was called the Jam-O-Matic. That was the nickname for the 740. Now listen, let me just cover this right now. It might seem like I'm being mean to the 760 and the 740 through a lot of this, but you know what? I always like to feel that I could be honest with you guys, but I know there's like fans out there. There's people that love these things, and then they'd watch this video. Of course, they're going to search YouTube for this gun. It's their favorite gun. My father handed it down to me. He used it flawlessly. You know how many deer he shot with that thing? You know how much fun I have with it? Every time I go hunting, I come home with a deer. It's awesome. I understand. I'm just really being honest in my comparison, my experience and my comparison with it with others and just what I'm reading. So a lot of it's true. A lot of what I'm reading online might not be accurate. I'm just bringing to you my take. So if you got to be mad at me, I'm sorry, but I'm telling you all the good things about it. I'm just going to tell you some of the things that are bad. And I don't have a 740. So again, I'm just talking about stuff that I've learned, but not from actual experience with the rifle. That being said, the 742 was going, I was going to buy both. Okay. I had the plan to buy both. I'm going to show you. There were 3 742s in a gun store. There was this one that had no scope on it. I think it was, these were all 742s. They weren't the 740s. This one had no scope on it, so I thought it'd be cool because it wasn't tapped. I don't like drilled receivers, you know what I mean? But it had the holes on the receiver, even though it didn't have a scope, and it was missing the cap on the on the pistol grip. So, and it was kind of beat up a little bit. Then there was another one. This one had a nice scope, and it had these had the plastic dust cover, and one of them had the dust cover was cracked, and you could get these aftermarket, but you can't get original ones. And I was just like, and then there was this other one with the scope here, and that one was, I don't know, there was something about that one that I didn't really like. I don't remember exactly, but none of these fit the bill for me. They just didn't. And the price was kind of high. And I, just after my research, I decided to just go with the 760. I just did. I kind of just bailed on it completely, like for now. It had issues. It just had these issues. Everything I'm reading, it had issues related to galling, tearing off cartridge rims, which I realized after I shot this one why it had a history. It had a thing with tearing off cartridge rims. I figured it out. It had loosening barrel extension problems, which were the locking lugs. Remind me, got to take a look at the locking lugs here. Unscrewing the locking lug piece inside of the barrel would unscrew from the barrel. So in February 1977, so this started with barrel date code LO. They changed it from a right hand to a left hand thread, and they did that with the 760s as well, just in case. But it wasn't really a problem with the 760s. I guess I just think it was like the battering and the torque created by the extraction with the semi-auto. Those things were really getting beaten up. This is a rifle. The 740 seems like it's a rifle that just like really beats the crap out of itself. You know what I mean? That's what it seems like. It was plagued also by magazine malfunctions, chamber rust. They were sensitive to dirt and powder fouling. They were sensitive to ammo choice. History of extractor breakage. And but like I said, even with all that, there are those that swear by them. So I'm remaining cautious for now. I'm going to continue to do my research. But you could check out Leroy's Ramblings for tons of info on both of these Remington, the 740, the 742, and the 760. I might look more into the 740. It's an older design. They kind of jumped right out of it in 1960 and went to the 742. There must be a reason. I think the 740, a lot of times you go like, oh, I'll just go with the older ones. They'll be better. But I don't know. They might have tried to fix a lot of these severe problems and might have had various levels of success with that. But I might entertain an early model. They're very different in construction, but I'll save any more particulars on that model for its own potential video in the future that we might get to. So let's talk about the magazines. Stamped steel, very advanced pieces for early 50s development of stamping. All right, these were what they call a deep drawn stamping from a single piece of steel. Remington did not own the tooling, and I'm pretty sure somebody else was even making them for them. I know they didn't own the tooling. I don't know if that meant, just from my reading, I don't know if that meant they were producing them but didn't own the tooling, or if they just didn't own the tooling so someone else was stamping them out for them. I'm pretty sure that was the case. It was another company doing it. But after years and years of production of making these magazines for them, the company, the die, it wore out, and the company didn't want to replace the dies. I guess it's just a lot of money to do that, and the company was like, listen, you pay for the die and we'll continue making these for you. And Remington's like, well, if we pay for the die, we could make them ourselves. I guess, maybe that was like the conversation that they had. Well, that company just, they started using somebody else. They just did not want to make the tooling again. So they turned to another company that used cheaper tooling. This was a magazine making company. It was basically a metal box construction with a plastic bottom. So I don't know if now they had a history of magazine problems, if that's where the magazine problems came in. I do not know. So the magazines for the 760, okay, they did not have this lever right here. So when you look at this and you see this on here, and again, I hope I'm right about this is what I'm reading. I hope I'm right about this, and it wasn't some weird anomaly in there where sometimes they did produce them with the 760s. But what this is a magazine that has a hold open built into it. And from what I'm reading, they did that just for the 740s and the 742s. They did all use the same magazine. They were compatible. The magazines were compatible. But the 740 had a magazine that would hold the bolt open. So when you use the pump action with these, it will lock open on the last shot. It's kind of odd for like a pump action like that. Like an 870 doesn't do that. You know what I mean? Like the pump action guns, usually there's nothing that tells you when you get to your last shot. That would be helpful with a lot of these 22s where on the last one you always dry fire it. You know what I mean? That would be kind of cool to have it do that with 22s, actually. But the magazine here is probably, it's a 90% chance. See, and you can't, the mag comes out. Does it come out when the slide is back? It's difficult. It's difficult to figure out. The operation of this thing is way complicated, because if the slide is forward, let's say, right, and you have the magazine in, I don't think you can. Well, it won't lock in, I don't think, also, right? Is that right? It won't lock in, and you can't take it out if it is locked in. So if when it's open, you could lock it in. Even then, sometimes it doesn't work. This mag is a pain in the ass. It might be better. There you go. See, now it locked in. Now now the action won't close unless you slide this guy right here. So sliding that forward, what that does is essentially, if you could see in there, it just lowers. See that? It just lowers the follower, so it'll close. And when it's closed, right, the magazine release button doesn't work. In a way, this is kind of cool, because when you're loaded, locked, loaded here, everything's ready to go, you don't have to worry about bumping this and the magazine falls out, or pulling the slide, or when the slide moves, the slide's locked, magazine's locked. The only thing that you could press that would move something is pressing the slide release will open the slide. So that is kind of cool that when it's in rock and roll mode, everything's locked up. But for the pump, I'm sure they weren't expecting that for the pump. What a pain in the neck. But this magazine is not supposed to have this thing on it. This is supposed to be just for the semi-autos. So it's kind of like a little idiosyncrasy that I got going on here. These magazines don't lock into place easily. They don't come out easily. I don't know how that could be. How could you have both? How could you do that? It pulls it off, though. It doesn't go in easily, and it doesn't come out easily. You think you'd have one and not the other, but when you want it to go in, it stays out. When you want it to come out, it stays in. It does that. So a real original 760 mag might be in the cards for me, but man, are they expensive. They do not fool around with the magazines for these guns. Woof! So where are we? Well, I guess we might as well touch on its nefarious history. And when we do this, this is always interesting. I noticed this I did a video. Well, it was some kind of revolver. I don't remember exactly how we even got on the subject, but one of my videos on one of these older guns related to something about Lee Harvey Oswald, and oh my God, did that go down a path. See, I like to have comments on the videos. Comments are great. Comments helps the algorithm. It helps YouTube. Is like, hey, there's people interested in this guy's stuff. But I don't want to troll anybody into commenting. Like, I don't want to have a gun channel and then just specifically touch on a controversial, like conspiracy theorist thing just to bring in comments and views. I don't want to just try to elicit activity. In other words, I try to really just be honest and stuff like that. This is one of those things we got to talk about, a little bit of a controversial conspiracy-like topic, because this exact rifle has something to do with it. So what is that history? We could get the mag in. Is it locked in? No, it's not. See? Here we go again. Lock it in. It won't go in. Rock it forward. Rock it back. Rock it somewhere. Press the release and let it go in. There you go. Did it lock? No. There it goes. See? It finally locked in. Ugh. This magazine will give you gray hair. It'll give you gray hair. And how do we lock the slide now? Although with this, that's right. We got to press that forward. Oh. Yeah. at 6:05 p.m. on April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, on a second floor balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Martin Luther King was shot and killed by a 40-year-old escaped fugitive named James Earl Ray with a Remington Model that he purchased 6 days prior. There's been a lot of research done and conspiracy theories galore on this topic. But one area of research that's interesting is that TV's Judge Joe Brown, who I learned from doing this research, never knew. He is an expert on weapons and ballistics. He presided as a Memphis judge on an ongoing appeal filed by James Earl Ray, that he was appealing his conviction, that he was coerced into a confession. And right after that, always maintained his innocence. And there is a lot of crazy stuff revolved around this case. Again, I don't want to start getting into it too much I don't want to feel like I'm like eliciting responses from people that study and know a lot more about these cases than I do. Like they study this thing like the way we study guns. You know what I mean? They're into like cases like this. Like as much information as like, let's say Judge Joe Brown has, where the turmoil began really over the rifles testing. It was insane that it wasn't even test fired. Like when they got this rifle, they found this rifle right after the assassination, and the FBI supposedly never test fired it. What and then there's a lot of the I'm going to say conspiracy theorists, but a lot of people that are examining this information, you wouldn't necessarily call them conspiracy theorists. They're just asking, I'm no detective or anything, but don't you just check to see if it was fired? Like they didn't even check to see if it was fired. I thought that was the thing. I thought that if like somebody got shot, they find me with a gun, I'm a suspect, they would take that gun to a lab and say, look, let's find out if it was recently shot. They can do that. And they didn't do it. And there's a lot of people that say like, yeah, they didn't come up with that information because they did do the test and they came to the conclusion that it wasn't fired. So that's what they're saying. Anyway, the FBI did a lot of weird stuff here. And Joe Brown was requesting the test results that were previously obtained by the FBI. See, the fragment of the bullet it wasn't like a full bullet. The way the bullet hit Dr. King, it kind of hit him in like the jaw area. And it ricocheted off of bone, like maybe his shoulder blade or scapula or something like that. And then severed his jugular and hit vertebrae. Did some weird stuff. It's kind of like how they talk about the JFK bullet. And as much as like I look at that JFK stuff and be interested in a lot of the anomalies, they tried to make the way the bullets traveled an anomaly, but they don't know anything about ballistics. And when you really study that stuff, as somebody that knows about ballistics, you're like, yeah, they called it a magic bullet. I'm like, yeah, it went through a neck, went through somebody's wrist, lodged in their thigh. Yeah, that's what bullets do. They ricochet off of stuff. They do all kinds of crazy stuff. And one bullet might be in perfect shape after going through what looks like a ton of stuff. And another bullet might be shattered to pieces just by hitting one thing. Ballistics is crazy, This bullet kind of broke apart. This is what they're saying, that they were just pieces and it wasn't easily matched to fired bullets from the rifle. But this information, Judge Joe Brown was requesting these test results. And the Tennessee Supreme Court stepped in and denied access, saying that asking for those results went beyond the parameters of the case on appeal. Now, I can't imagine if you were appealing and anything else would matter, but did the bullet that they took out of the victim match the gun that you're putting in the accused's hands? What more would be relevant? I didn't understand that, and I trying to do research on it, couldn't really find much. But Joe Brown, he pressed for retesting only to be removed from the case. Okay, so the state Supreme Court yanked him from the case, but Ray died before a new judge could be appointed. How do you like that? So James Earl Ray's brother, Jerry Ray, sued for the possession of the rifle, but was denied on the premise that it was abandoned. It's funny how they gave Lee Harvey Oswald's rifle to his wife, but for some reason, that rifle was considered abandoned, and it's since the successful petition to the Shelby County Court to have it donated, the rifle is now in the possession of the National Civil Rights Museum, which, amazingly enough, purchased and occupies the Lorraine Hotel building. So the Lorraine Hotel is the National Civil Rights Museum, if you didn't know that, where they have this rifle is there on display. And interestingly enough, researching just to get pictures of this rifle, there's a website that professes to be about nefarious weapons and to show pictures of, like, these are the weapons used in the actual crimes, historical crimes, and they show these guns. So I'm like, oh, great, perfect. They had this rifle there. I pulled up a picture of it. Here it is. And I'm like, well, it looks a certain way. You know what I mean? And turns out I found the actual pictures that you could see. They have the police evidence. This is how you always know with the Son of Sam stuff. I always knew I had the right gun because it literally had the police, the NYPD placard next to it, of the evidence placard identifying it and everything. So that's how you know you got the real one. And that's how I got the real one here. And this is displayed in that museum. So Joe Brown, he has continued in his efforts to have this rifle tested, but the museum, you would think the museum would now be in charge of it and be like, yeah, forget it, screw the FBI, here you go. Let's get to the bottom of this. But no, the museum will not release the rifle for further testing. They feel that it's somebody in charge over there made a statement like, let the people make their own decision. It's like, what? What, don't you want the real decision? Don't you really want them to have the right information to make the decision with? Yeah, I want to make the right decision too. I want to make my own decision, but I need the information. I need to know if the bullets from that rifle match the craziness. Reading about this, sometimes you're amazed that this went on, But check out YouTube channel, The Art of Dialogue. They have a video featuring Joe Brown. It's like a 10-minute long video. There's probably a ton of stuff with Joe Brown talking about Martin Luther King assassination, conspiracy stuff, because he definitely believes that there was nonsense going on. And this guy, he talks about, I could just tell by the way he's talking that this guy knows loads more about guns than I do. I could just tell. He's like, you meet up with those guys where they start talking, they start quoting certain guns and certain things, and then you're like, wow, this guy knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. So one last thing I'll touch on with this: the shooting of Dr. King was a major factor in the passing of the Gun Control Act of 1968. There were a couple of, it was Kennedy, both Kennedys, and there was a lot going on then regarding where these guns were coming from. That was the thing. It was that like Oswald bought it on in some magazine, you know what I mean? And James Earl Ray, I had where he bought this stuff. Let me see. He purchased the rifle, a 2x7 scope, 20 rounds of ammo from Aero Marine Supply Company. And he used a fake ID because he was a fugitive from justice. He had escaped from prison a year before. So he had to have used the fake ID. He had here, I think this is a picture of his fake ID. I think the name, you can read the name on the bottom. He had a fake passport. That's what he used. So this is part of where there were no background checks before that. You could just order a gun, even a handgun, out of a magazine and have it shipped right to your house. There were no serial numbers or anything. Nobody was tracking anything. The government didn't check to see who you were if you were buying a gun, or you just buy one in the store and go home. And that was federal. So the Gun Control Act of 1968 is what started all your background checks, because they were saying, like, this guy, Aero Marine Supply Company, shouldn't be the place to check somebody's ID to determine if it's real, if it's legit. But I was going to touch on this a little bit more, actually, but it's such a tremendous amount of information. We've gone on enough on it. You could see that eventually, I would lose. I already lost so many people because they're just like, what is this? The Martin Luther King assassination channel? I'm out. But I do this for the diehards anyway. But there's such a tremendous amount of information. It leaves a nice avenue for you to research if you want to explore where those roads go. And maybe one of these days, even we will touch on it more. But let's, for those of you who stayed now, you should have hung in there. People that left should have hung in there, because now we're going to take a closer look at this rifle. Somebody said to me, they're like, hey, why don't you show the rifle more close up? You know what I mean? It's so far away. I want to see it closer. And it's true. I'm always thinking, like, I watch the videos back, like editing them, and I'm like, you never even really got close to show some of those cool things close up. I'll let you know one cool thing. One thing that messes that up. I use an iPhone for these videos, okay? Shouldn't let you into the back office, but I very rarely do. But guys, I'm going to let you in. I'm going to let you into a little back information here. Back office, Milsurp Garage info. I use an iPhone, and it's an older iPhone. It looks good enough to me. I have an external mic now, so I would like to think that the audio is better. I've always had audio problems. The external mic I like. But the thing is, when you zoom in with the iPhone, one thing is, once you start a video, then if you want to zoom closer, it only goes a certain amount. It doesn't switch to the micro camera mid-video, only at the beginning of the video, and then you're stuck with that camera. And when you zoom in with an iPhone really close and use the close camera, it does some kind of jittery thing. And it's a bug that's been going on forever. Even my last iPhone had the same bug. So it's not like the phone is broken. It's the software. It's something I should really use, like a quality camera. That's what I should use, a quality camera. But, yeah, I don't know. I think YouTube will throw us off before we'll ever really move into better camera territory. Let's cover the rifle. What do we got? An aluminum butt plate, number 1. Whoa, I got caught on something there. Sorry. Aluminum butt plate, but kind of cool. It's not the newer one with the white line spacer and the joint. I like this better. I love this wood. Look at how this wood looks. Nice, right? The sling swivel, the wood. What do we got here? The Williams peep sight. All right, let's see if we got a good look at that. And yeah, look at the scrolling. Switching around over here. No, like 760A, 760 BDL. They didn't put anything. They all just said 760. Early serial, 5-digit serial. And that's why you can't really tell what model you have with these, is because they did not mark on them, on the scrolling. And you can kind of tell the dating it also by how many patents it has. It has this patent. I gave you that one, but it says others pending. Some of the newer rifles, you'll see 2, then 3 different patents, depending ones came in. And then you could tell when those patents were granted that must be when your rifle was made after that. So you could get crafty with them if you ever needed to. The sight blank here, this sight blank is missing. It's a 3/8 inch dovetail there, so that when you have the peep sight, the sight doesn't get in the way of your sighting. So now there were different sights that went on here. So the older versions of this rifle have this dovetail here, and it was just an old school type sight that went in that dovetail. The newer ones, like the ones that were on that 742. Oh, that's what it was. Remember I told you there were 2 742s with scopes that I didn't like either of them. Well, one of them, well, there was some reason why I didn't like it. The dust cover was cracked. The other one, it was missing the sight. And those sights, they have a sight base that's screwed in with 2 screws. So where the sight would be, there isn't a 3/8 inch dovetail if it's missing. There's just 2 holes where it's missing. And that sight base, from what I'm reading, is unique to this rifle. And that on that base, it had another sight, like might have even been another 3/8 inch dovetail on that the sight clipped into. Me, I'm going to leave it missing. I'm just going to put a sight blank in here. Also, thing of interest here, we were talking about this tube before and how the cap travels with the older ones. Those, they're a little bit easier to take apart, but even so, I'm reading, I did not dismantle this completely, and from what I'm reading, you should leave these alone. Let me turn it around. So how these work is, it has a pin right here, okay, that you'd have to punch out. When that pin is punched out, you'd be able to unscrew this cap from here. And then this hole in the tube right here is used to insert a screwdriver or a punch through it, and then you use that to turn, and you could unscrew this tube from here, to unscrew it, to take it off, to take the fore end off, and then to dismantle it, to take the bolt out, everything, right? This is where you would start to completely take it apart. I didn't. I cleaned it with it together. When you get good, you could do that. You take off as much as you can, wood-wise. You just spray it out with gun scrubber. You use compressed air. You could do a pretty good cleaning without that. You use tweezers with patches to reach some hard-to-find areas. It's never going to be as 100% as you completely dismantling it. But I knew right away this was not one to mess with. This adjustment right here and this pin, it's in really tight. And if you look online of anybody that's taken these apart, they completely destroyed this. So I left it alone. One thing of interest, though, is that in here, see that? There's a ring with a spanner. They call that, you need like a spanner wrench for that. I use one of these, and I go in here like this, and I get onto each side of it like that, and I turn it. I do it carefully to make sure I don't damage the wood, damage the metal, obviously. But I use this as a spanner wrench to get in there and turn. You try to get one that's, see how this one's kind of, I use this one specifically because see how it's tapered like that to fit into small areas. So that's why I use this one for that. As opposed to say, like, don't grab one like this and then when you destroy something, blame me. You can see it's a whole lot bigger and the jaws are a whole lot wider. So you don't want to use one like that. You want to kind of try to get one that you use for spanner, stuff like that, that has these thin cut jaws. You want to tighten that. And well, you just want to make sure it's snug. I don't say you want to tighten it. If it's snug, it's snug. But you want to get in there and you want to make sure that that's tightened, because if it's not, if it's unscrewed, it comes out a little bit. And if it's out a little bit, when you move the pump lever forward, I'm going to take the magazine out again. When you move the pump lever forward, if that's screwed out even a little bit, this distance right here is very important to where it stops. When it hits that spot right there is very important to the timing that it has to perfectly lock up. And if a lot of people, you see, they have issues with these rifles where they say they don't lock up. They have issues where they load it and they push the pump forward and it doesn't fully lock up. And that's the reason why. The reason why they're not locking up has to do with all the way up here. This has unscrewed and is bumping into this guy. And a lot of times people, they try to adjust it from here. They try to adjust this tube and do weird stuff here. And this is, leave this alone. Just tighten this guy and you'll be okay in that respect. One other weird anomaly that I'm having with this guy is in the trigger group. And again, this is, oh my Lord, I'll try to close it. I keep forgetting. Okay, so the trigger group. Problem I'm having is with the safety. And I'm probably not going to be able to get in here. It's dark. I'm not going to be able to really get in here to show you what's going on. But suffice to say, I'm going to try to explain it. The safety, these get a lot of criticism. And this opened up a whole world for me here. I don't mind a safety being there. I just don't really use them. And the fact that this one is messed up, that it won't actuate. And the reason why I don't mind that is because I would rather it not accidentally activate. But in researching this problem, it led me to a book, Unsafe by Design, by Jack Belk, on forensic gunsmithing and firearm accident investigations. I love when something leads you down a road that you normally wouldn't be going down. And this was awesome. So inside this book led me to research on the Remington Common Fire Control. So this is Crittenden's patent that I just gave you before. Which one is it again? It's 2675638. Crittenden's Fire Control. This was called the RCFC, Remington Common Fire Control. This was born on the 1148 shotgun. And it wasn't long before they started having issues with gunk kind of getting deposited in this like little tunnel that was inside of it. It took a long time to really figure out what was going on and what the problems were with this. But they were double and triple firing semi-autos, like the 1148. And, this came from the Model 11, the Remington Model 11, which was Browning's A5 design, right? Never had a problem. But as soon as they switched to this Remington Common Fire Control, you can see on the 1148, it doesn't really look like a Browning design. It looks more like an 870 or the 1100 because it uses that trigger guard. And, it doesn't have the hump anymore, and it uses that newer RCFC, so it looks like a modern shotgun. It doesn't look like Browning's design anymore, but the design still worked great, but the trigger group didn't. Doubling and tripling happened and all of this stuff, right? John Browning was up there laughing. And this led to, in this book, it led to other issues with it, and leading to discussion on the Remington Walker trigger design, which is on the 720 and the 721 bolt action rifles, part of the 700 family. We're not going to touch on those rifles now. I don't have one, maybe one of these days. But if you don't know the history with the 720 and the 721, it's an amazing history of firearm litigation, blame, investigating how firearms function, basically just a forensic gunsmithing and firearm accident investigation. That is definitely 100% what was going on with the 720 and the 721 bolt action rifles, which again, certainly needs its own video. But for our purposes here, the problems I was having with the safety, I'm just going to leave it alone. And the reason why there's a lot of criticizing going on here with this is that there really is no safety. It's better. This is why it's better not to use safeties. In my opinion, I don't want to trust anything mechanical. I mean, if I pull the trigger and it doesn't fire because something mechanically goes wrong, so be it. I mean, that doesn't something mechanically wrong. It's not firing. But if there's something that I'm relying on, I'm relying on when I pull the trigger, it's going to fire. But if it doesn't, nobody gets hurt. I mean, you could get hurt if it's a self-defense situation, of course. But I'm just saying that act alone doesn't necessarily hurt someone. But if you had to rely on a safety and now the safety doesn't work, that's a different issue now. Now you're expecting it to not fire and it does. That's bad. So coming from, Glock was always my EDC, let's say. You know what I mean? I'm just a Glock guy. Glocks don't have safeties. The safety on a Glock, and I know there's the trigger, the safety on the trigger, there's safety here, safety this. There are safety features, but there is no true click on, click off safety. They call it a psychological safety. And I always lived by that principle, is that the safety is just that, if you pull the trigger, it's going to fire. So you have to always be safe. And like no gun that has a messed up safety, a trigger, a gun that just spontaneously fires, none of those things would be an issue if you didn't have it pointed at someone. It has to be pointed at somebody to hurt them. And for someone to get shot, the gun has to be pointed at them, is what I'm saying. So by following all the normal firearm rules, the 10 commandments of firearm handling, you would not have to worry about somebody getting shot. That's why I don't like to have to rely on a safety. So this safety gets criticism. Again, sorry, I got sidetracked. It gets criticism because it's not a true safety. It doesn't block the hammer from coming down. It doesn't actually stop anything from happening. The only thing it's doing is when you move this switch, the safety button, over, it's fatter on one end than the other, so it blocks the trigger from being pulled physically. It actually just obstructs the trigger from being pulled. But this is why that cannot be such a good idea, because if there's something wrong with it, see, I can push it, it moves over. See, can you hear it? It's snicking back and forth. It's just not going all the way. So because it's not going all the way, you might think it's on. When you pull the trigger, it moves back. Did you see that? Watch. It's going to move back all by itself. And then fire. It's not, is it charged? Oh, the action isn't closed. Here. I think I got the safety on. I pull the trigger. It moves over and it fires. So, yes, I mean, somebody might say you should fix that just so that when you give it to the next guy, he doesn't get killed by it. Or somebody that handles your rifle, you might forget to tell them that the safety doesn't work. You're right. Those are definitely factors. But I'm leaving it how it is because I don't even really know what's wrong. It's probably, I thought maybe there was dirt in it. I tried to just remove this to get it out, but because it's stuck like that, I can't even pull that little plunger out and then pull the safety out of there. It's just kind of like that. And for now, that's how it's staying. That's how I got it. That's how it's staying. Probably some teething problems with early versions, you think? Let's get in here. Knew I was going to forget. Let's take a look at those locking lugs in here. Wild. So yeah, the bolt has a crazy array of locking lugs. See how they turn into lock-in in there? See that? They lock into the Hellraiser box in there. So on either side of the receiver here, I think there's 14 locking lugs, something like that. And I think the semi-auto has 9. I don't remember the number, but see how that turns and locks in there. And that's strong enough to withstand the 3006 explosion. Problem is, there is not any primary extraction going on here. See how it's turning, but it doesn't start pulling back until right there. So primary extraction would be, if you want to get like a nail, you hammer a nail into a board, you want to get it out. You don't just yank like this, try to pull it straight out. It'll never come out. And if you sit there and twist, it's just going to stay in one spot because you're just twisting, right? The way you get it out is you pull and twist at the same time. So, when you pull something and twist it, it comes out. It's just a natural thing that you would do even if you wanted to remove something, is you pull it and twist it back and forth at the same time. That's how something comes out when it's wedged in something. So most rifles, at the very beginning, you'll see the bolt turning and coming back. Like the M1 Garand, you'll see it turns, it comes back and turns at the same time. That's primary extraction, it's called. So it turns before it just comes straight back. This one turns, it turns as it's coming back. This one just turns at first. See? Then when it gets old, then it doesn't turn anymore and it just pulls. So turn, then pull. Not both. Turn, then pull. You want to see this turning as it's pulling. I think that's why the rounds, for me, got stuck. That's what was happening. It brings us to shooting the rifle. So that's what was going on with me. I was struggling with this thing. It was a workout. It was a struggle to load the mag in the gun. It was a struggle to cycle the action. The bolt lacks that primary extraction, and this causes difficult case extraction, causes a struggle with the pump, but it causes a more violent case rim removal on the semi-auto. The semi-auto 740s, because all of that struggling that I'm doing with the pump becomes a violent tearing, ripping out in a semi-auto. That gas-operated system, that has a lot of strength. And my limited amount of torque that I could get on it, I have to just like struggle with the pump to eventually get it out. Semi-auto doesn't do that. Semi-auto just rips it out. And because of that, there's extractor breakage, rim separation from the case, literally ripping the rim off the cases. So I can't believe that there's people out there that would say they have one of these 3006 that functions flawlessly. I really doubt that. But here's what I got here. I got my brass, and I could show you. Whoops. I could show you that I didn't have any. There's no tearing going on up here. I know what you're thinking. I was using PPU M1 Garand, 150 grain. This is mild stuff, okay? And you could kind of see, yeah, it's getting stuck. It's getting stuck. Couldn't cycle the action. It was getting stuck. It was annoying. What could I say? Well, what do we got here? We got one more thing, a couple of more things. These are our realistic snap caps. Check it out. I'm sure you can find yourself to the website. I can't link anything, but if you could find yourself on the website for realistic snap caps, I love these things. I highly recommend them. And if you use coupon code one word Milsurp Garage, you'll get 10% off your order. I love these things because they're real enough for function testing where you don't have to, like, a rifle like this will destroy plastic crop. Forget about it. You're having problems with extraction, you're gonna like tear the plate, you're gonna chew the plastic to nothing. You'll be able to test nothing. You would definitely need something like this, and you have these silicone primers in there where you could even see where the firing pin, if the firing pin's hitting it, you know. You get good enough with these things to even see what that looks like, to tell how hard it's hitting it. So I wanted to put this together for you like this, just to show you that how impossible this rifle is. So when the bolt is closed, okay, the rifle's action is closed up, and you go to put the mag in. I don't think you're going to be able to, from what I remember. See, it's like the rounds are going up against the bottom of the. I think if you push it really hard, oh yeah, see, it just clicked in when I gave it that shove. I guess there is a way to do it if you really push hard. I'm trying to open here. Oh man, it's like hard to open. And but you know, since firing it, because I did a lot of function testing before firing it, after firing it, it's definitely smoother. So maybe me not being able to really get in there and clean like crazy might have had something to do with it. But so bang. And we can automatically, we can cycle. We don't have to press anything to cycle after we pull the trigger. And you just can't baby this thing. That's what it is. Yeah, see that? It's got to be all the way closed. See how it was only open a teeny bit and I couldn't pull the trigger? Well, it was closed that time, I suppose. But see if we could do it this time. If it's not closed all the way, it has to do that. It has to really make that click closed. Yeah, it's doing much better than it was. And there's round 4. And we'll lock open on the last round. So yeah, that function testing right there, I mean, you know, listen, that passed. I just know if I was firing real rounds, I wouldn't be able to open it. That would be the thing. So on a side note, if you've been directed here to the end of this video from the Harrington Richardson Topper Model 158 video, or anybody that remembers a couple of videos back, we did a video on that where I didn't get a chance to fire. We had 3 barrels. We had a 20 gauge, a 410 gauge, and a 30-30 barrel. Since I was at the rifle range, I figured I'd take the opportunity to break it out. I finally made it to the range with it, and the 30-30 barrel functioned flawlessly. Although I don't know what this means. I guess I didn't look it up online. I meant to, but I forgot. But the brass. One curious thing about the brass with that guy is that, see how the primers are popping out? The primers are all proud after firing. Can you see that? How they're kind of popped out a little bit? Never saw that before, but yeah. None of them any different than the other. None of them actually out. But I don't know what that means. Every single one was like that. Popped out a little bit. You could feel it. I don't know what that means, but it was flawless. So my advice is, if you must have one of these, let's tidy up over here. Let's get it closed. Let's present it properly. If you must have one of these, get one. But I doubt that smooth action when it's empty will be the same with a recently fired 3006 cartridge to eject. So be prepared. My advice is, if you can find a Model 14, and this is what's really going to piss the Model 760 people off more than anything else. If you could find one of these, if you want to talk about smooth pump design, oh man, this is what it's all about. Here's your release button. You don't have to worry about box magazines not coming in and out. You could even load pointy bullets because this spiral magazine keeps the tips off of the primers. And typical Petersen design, the whole tube travels with the pump. The whole loading mechanism here on the bottom travels with the pump. You load through here, smooth as can be. I got some 35 Remington realistic snap caps too. I should have had them out, but I don't. Loads nice and smooth. This is kind of like what the sight should look like. That would go on here too. So you could probably use one of these if you wanted to. But the Model 14, the only thing it lacks is the 3006. So if you have to go with 3006, then you have to go with the Model 760. Otherwise, if you really just want to have the centerfire Remington pump, I think the Model 14, the 141, I don't think this thing beat it. That's all I'm saying. I don't think it beat it. Very popular in states that do not allow semi-automatic rifles for hunting. I can tell you that. That it's one of the very few pump action examples that you'd have if lever actions aren't your thing. But then again, how could that not be your thing? How could a Winchester 94 not be what you reach for? I don't know, but if you gotta have one of these, go for it. Just my advice is get an older one, and stick with the pump. If you're on the fence about the semi-auto and the pump, I say just go with the pump. And if you want to take a look online, again, this is what is his website again? Leroy's Ramblings. He's got an article like this on both the 740, the 760, 7600, and the 740. Excellent information there. There's tons of information online with the murder weapon here of Dr. King and the FBI's supposed investigation. You could take a look at that. Here's the page from that book that I mentioned on the forensic firearms. I'm sorry, I forgot it, but it's back there. Go take a look. This is the information I saw on the RCFC, where Remington's fix was to drill a hole right here to let the gunk out that was building up, that was causing the doubling and the tripling. And, if you take a look here, there's no hole. There's no hole in this one. Okay, so that's something to watch out. You got to keep them nice and clean. If you don't want any, it's not going to be any doubling and tripling with the pump action, but you know what I mean. And then, Wikipedia, shooting times, all kinds of stuff on these. Take heart, your Remington pump gun is a fine deer rifle. See? There's positive stuff, but sorry, but your Remington autoloader is a crappy deer rifle. You also have that. So take a look online. Get all the information that you need to make the decision for yourself. Me, this one's going to be a fun one to take to the range once in a while when I feel like wrestling with a rifle. And yeah, we haven't made an hour-plus video in a long time. It's been good visiting with you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. I might even post this thing on Thanksgiving, maybe the day before. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays because I definitely feel like I have a lot to be thankful for. And glad to have you guys with me. And we'll see you all next time. We got some cool stuff on the horizon. Interesting. We always love interesting, right? I definitely might not be popular. The next few videos, I really doubt they're going to get a lot of views. I'm preparing for not that many views because they're little niches where they're interesting but not popular. But that's my favorite. So I'll see you all soon and we'll explore.